Hey Village, welcome to our weekly recap. Last week we had Pastor Paul come on and talk to us about membership. This week we have Dave Lewis on the podcast to talk about the Sunday sermon, which was about stewardship. So Dave, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your role on the council here?
So my wife Tracy and I, we have been attending Village since 2001. We were I'd say relatively new believers, sort of childhood Christians, if you will.
Okay.
But Village really became the place where our faith solidified, and was baptized here at Village as well. I laugh, in high school I had what I call the backroom baptism.
Oh no, okay.
At a Nazarene church with just my mom and my brothers and the pastor, but I had an actual in the chapel public baptism here.
Okay.
We raised our kids here. They went through they started in the preschool program all the way up through youth group, and now my daughter has graduated from college, and my son's a senior at Portland State. That's so fantastic. We've gone through that. This is my second round on the board. Yeah. I've served a variety of roles. One of the things about Village is they're not afraid to give you more. And so I was on as what we call an at-large board member at first for maybe 2 years, I think.
Yeah.
And then they wanted me to step in as vice chair, and so I did that for 2 years, and then I became the chairman, and I was the chairman for 2 years, and then I had a gap, and I came back as treasurer, which is the role that I'm currently in now. So I think I've had every role except for the secretary at this point.
Okay.
And I'm also on the associate pastor search committee, which is the first search committee I've actually ever been on.
Really? No way. Okay. Yeah. Wow. No, thank you for sharing that. So here's a fun question then. In your 21 years then here at Village, what is one of your favorite memories?
Oh, wow. Family camp has always been favorite memories. We did that every year throughout my kids growing up. And in fact, one year, my son was in high school, and my high school reunion was the same weekend as family camp. We couldn't go to family camp, but my son still wanted to go because it was tradition.
Yes.
So he went with another family, the Guide family, and he enjoyed family camp without us. So that's a favorite. Family camp has been a favorite.
That's what I've heard about our family camps at Villages. They're legendary. So I'm looking forward to this whole pandemic thing going behind us so we can experience that. No, so thank you so much for joining us today. So as we talked about stewardship this past Sunday, Pastor Paul preached about Ananias and Sapphira, and the elephant in the room is it's financial giving, financial contributions to the church. And I think we've often seen really in the media and in pop culture poor portrayals of financial contributions to the church. And the way that the church talks about money oftentimes can seem controversial. I mean, from certain pastors with private jets and luxurious cars and expensive tastes in clothes to, the jokes about the Roman Catholic Church and paying for salvation. We see caricatures of poor ways that the church can talk about money. But I think for us at Village, the goal isn't to therefore avoid hot topics or difficult conversations, but to then ask, how do we then talk about these difficult issues, such as money, especially in our culture when money seems to be such a private matter. Mm-hmm. It's almost some ways more offensive for me to ask somebody how much their salary is than to ask them another personal question, because money can be private. And so for us, as we talk about stewardship and giving to the church, in your perspective, how can we make it less taboo? How do we talk about money in such a way that is honest and transparent and authentic?
Those are great questions. I mean, my own journey here at Village has sort of been along that arc. So when Tracy and I first started coming, we were young parents. We actually had fairly large credit card debt, and we weren't giving. Yeah. And we attended a budgeting class mainly to determine how to set up a budget and budget our lives. Yeah. And one of the topics was about giving to the church and how it is a reflection of the grace and mercy that Jesus has shown on you. And that was probably the first time I'd ever heard anything like that, because prior to that, church doesn't need my money. I mean, look at this building. They don't need this. What are they going to do with my money? Yeah. And when it really sank home that it's not about that. It's about my heart and where my heart is that matters, that changed. And then we went to the full cycle of, is it before tax? Is it after tax?
Yeah.
Where you get really legalistic. And that had settled down too. Yeah. And as a board member over the years and as the treasurer, I've had lots of conversations with our lead pastors about preaching about giving, preaching about stewardship. And there has been some reticence to do that. And I can understand that. When a pastor is preaching about money, there can be this sort of guilt, if you will, that I'm asking for you to pay my salary. I mean, that's hard, and I don't want anyone to have to do that. Yeah. But on the other hand, we do have generations. So if we look generationally, we have an older generation for whom giving monthly seems to be much more ingrained. It's how they were brought up, and that's what they continue to do. Yeah. And we have younger generations that haven't been taught that yet or haven't seen that modeled yet. And I want to create more opportunities for villagers of all ages to hear about what giving really is, what stewardship really is. And I was watching, as a family, we watched last night The Eyes of Tammy Faye Baker. It's about Jim Baker and Tammy Faye Baker. And they were the televangelist, prosperity gospel. Yeah. And quite frankly, it was making me sick to my stomach listening to the Jim Baker sermons and their attitude, about money and spending the money that folks were sending to them on jets and multiple houses. Yeah. And I thought to myself, how that puts a barrier to people giving to the needs of missions, local missions, global missions, the church, and how do we overcome that sort of stigma that you see in the media?
Right. And so this Sunday, when and previous times when you've given the church an update regarding our finances, could you share a bit on the posture and the position of your heart this past Sunday, knowing that you'd be on the big screen talking about money, especially if some people, and yes, generationally, but also culturally, because we are a multicultural church pursuing integration, and the way we talk about money varies generationally, but also culturally. What was the posture of your heart, and what did you hope to convey in regards to finance and stewardship to the church?
So my main goal whenever I'm talking about where we are financially is I want to be absolutely transparent. Yeah. I want to give the correct information, or I want to point you to where you can get it. Now, am I always going to get it right? No, and in fact, as I watched my financial video, I had said that we set aside $20,000 for various facilities improvements. Yeah. That was completely wrong. I don't know why I said that. Yeah. The number was actually $200,000 in my notes, but I said 20. Yeah. And it's actually less than $200,000. Yes. So that's something where I'll misspeak, and I'll be fixing that during the budget info meetings. Yes. So first, I want to be transparent, and that's why when we post on our website with every 2 weeks exactly where we are, exactly what's come in, what we've spent. So that's the first thing is to be transparent. And the other thing that I honestly really struggle with, and in years past I've had to do this, particularly as we get towards the end of the year and we've got this big gap we want to make up. It's really painful to me to go to meet at life groups, meet with groups, and I almost feel like I'm begging for money to finish it. I just hate having to do that, because then it feels like I'm getting into guilting people. Look, we've got this much money that we have to bring in. Please join us. I want giving to be something that is talked about not at the end of the year exclusively, but throughout the year, because it is a picture of our heart. And I was really resonated with what Paul talked about giving and stewardship into the New Testament is for the fellowship of believers, koinonia, for the Jesus' dream for the kingdom, the daikusune, and an expression of charis or charis, the grace and mercy that Jesus has shown us. Yes, it's not about guilt or compulsion or obligation. It's about, I have been blessed by the grace of the Lord, and I want to bless others.
Yeah, and I think that's so appropriate, because what we're talking about at Village and our pursuit of deeper fellowship, deeper community, more intimate communities, money can be an indicator or a barrier. It can indicate to us whether or not we're willing to trust one another with what money we have, whether it's what little or how much money we have. And I think, of course, we always want to be cautious to never use spiritual language to manipulate financial giving. But I think for us at our church, we have some fairly knowledgeable people, and I know for myself, if I'm not careful, I can use my intellect to rationalize an unwillingness to participate, whether monetarily and through the whole gambit. And so I think that leads us to the larger question of, yes, when we talk about financial contributions to the church and stewardship, the gifts that we've been given to take care of, and the gifts we're asked to give, whether it be money, that not just dominate the conversation, but the larger conversation is, how are we contributing to this church, this family that we call Village? And so in your observation and estimation, yes, we need to have a healthy conversation around financial giving, but what are other ways that villagers and community members can participate and contribute to Village, to the kingdom of God, that may not necessarily be monetary? So
we have a budget. I mean, we have to keep the lights on. We have staff who are working really hard, who deserve the pay they got. But if you are a family, and Tracy and I were like that when we started out, where you're just not there, you're still trying to make sure that there's food on the table, that the rent's getting paid, that the kids have what they need. And there are lots of ways to contribute. We've talked in the past about contributing your time, your talents, and your resources. Time is one of our most precious commodities. And let's just give an example. Let's say you're young parents and you have kids in the preschool and in the kids group. Well, they need volunteers there. So there's an opportunity that, okay, I can't afford to give very much, or if at all, financially, but I will give of my time in Sunday school and in preschool. We have lots of volunteer opportunities throughout Village, and we have lots of volunteer needs throughout Village as well. There's also other opportunities. I mean, you can, maybe it is financially related, but you can donate goods as well. We've had cars donated. We've had lots of different stuff donated.
A bus we're finally getting off the lot. Yes,
Right.
yes.
You can donate stocks or bonds, things like that. We've had some weird stuff donated over the years.
Right,
I mean, honestly, and I hope this isn't offensive to whoever,
No.
but some villagers, maybe 15 years ago, donated 2 burial plots down in Salem.
That's great.
I don't know what happened to those burial plots, but that was a donation.
No. Okay, yes. No, that's great. Yeah.
So there are things like that aren't just handing over a check. It's something that you have.
Yeah.
And I know you've heard of Nextdoor, for example, where people post things that they have for free. We can do that here at Village too. We've got immigrant families who need dressers and beds and couches and things like that. We can give that stuff to them.
Yeah. Thank you, because I think what's being captured with what you're sharing is what can we contribute for the common good, especially with our generational and cultural diversity. I think, to your point exactly, with children's ministry and youth ministry, those ministries particularly need villagers to contribute their time and their presence for the sake of others. And I think that imagery really well captures what it means to give financially. The contribution is not out of compulsion, but it's out of a movement towards the common good. And just as Pastor Paul said in regards to membership is not essential for salvation, and neither is financial monetary giving. But this is an opportunity and a way for us to take responsibility for the community that we're a part of.
And it is a reflection, as Paul said, Pastor Paul, of our heart.
Yeah.
That is one way, one benchmark or one indicator of your heart is look where you actually spend your resources.
Yeah. No, thank you, Dave. And Village, so with this episode of the recap, money may be a difficult conversation to have. I mean, talk about money in your own family is already difficult, but now talking about money in the context of your DNA group, how can we discover, nurture, and then activate? No, I'm missing the A. We'll place it up on the screen. But in our DNA groups, how are we talking about money, and how does that serve as an indicator and a litmus test for the posture and condition of our hearts? So Dave, thank you so much for joining us on the recap, and so glad that you could be tuning in, and we're looking forward to seeing you next week on the next recap. Thanks so much.
Thank you.